And good afternoon, producer Susan. Did you survive the 4th of July weekend?
Friday was lovely because there was no humidity, despite the fact it was very warm.
Well, great. I actually went to a cookout at my sister-in-law's place. And I think by the way, midway through the cookout, before they started serving food, I wound up having to go to one of those urgent care places. I got a bite on my leg, which I think was a tick bite and became infected. So I took a little side trip to the urgent care and got a bunch of antibiotics and whatnot. Because I never saw a bite. At first, I thought it was a mosquito bite, and it never got so bad so quickly. So anyway, that's how I spent part of my
Wow.
Saturday. All right. You want to hear what we're going to try to squeeze in today? We got so much to talk about.
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
All right. Well, today's the 8th of July, 4 days after the 4th, and it's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. And I got a lot of stuff you didn't hear on TV. I've got some perspective you didn't hear on TV, particularly about the floods.
Ugh.
So let me give you the rundown. So our stupidest thing I've heard a week, we actually have two contenders. The first is about the flood in Texas, where people claiming that the flood deaths in Texas this past weekend are Trump's fault and
Ugh.
or the fault of climate change. So that's the stupid things we'll talk about, and we'll give you proof that it wasn't. And the second is Joe Biden on TV last week. He went on The View telling the host of The View that he could have beaten Trump last week had he not dropped out of the race, and then why he did drop out of the race. You're going to have to decide the winner, which of those two things is the most stupid this week. Um, by the way, do you think Biden could have beaten Trump if he stayed in the
No,
race? No,
not at all.
not at all. All right. We'll play a clip of a very different answer. Do you have an Alexa device in your house?
I do, yes.
You probably didn't ask it last fall. Why should I vote for Donald Trump or why should I vote for Kamala Harris? Did you?
No, I didn't.
Well, somebody did, and they recorded what Alexa said last year. And we'll play the very different answers that Alexa gave to those two questions. Um, Remember, we're way back. We're going back to the Rocky and Bullwinkle show when they had the Wayback Time Machine.
Mhm.
Remember the criticism that like people like Hakeem Jeffries had for Trump because he did that bombing raid on Iran 2 weeks ago and didn't tell anybody ahead of time?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we've got a clip of Nancy Pelosi from 2011 praising Barack Obama for his surprise raid on Libya, and then condemning President Trump for doing the same thing. So that's our way back segment. We and once again, who's our favorite senator?
Senator Kennedy out of Louisiana.
Right. Well, he's questioning a Democrat witness during a congressional hearing on the rapid nationwide increase in the cost of electricity. Has your electric bill gone up?
It has, yes.
Mine has gone up about 30% for the same kilowatt usage. All right. And remember Hunter Biden?
Mhm.
Well, he's claiming, he's involved in a lawsuit and he's asking the judge to dismiss the suit, claiming he's broke. And this is the guy who was selling his paintings for $50,000 a pop just as quickly as he could paint them. You remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, we're going to go into that a little bit more and wonder why how come a guy who was selling paintings at $50,000 a pop just as quick as he could put oil on canvas is now saying he's broke. Um, this is a regional story, but I think it's interesting. Again, we're going to go back to this race for the mayor of New York City. Last week we talked about the socialist guy named Korhan Mondami, who's promising everybody free stuff.
Yeah.
One of his opponents in the race was former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who resigned in disgrace over sexual harassment claims. And he's now threatening to run as an independent against the current mayor, Eric Adams, who's also said he's going to run as an independent. We'll tell you why that's a lose-lose proposition and who else would lose if they both do that. And we have another Doge update. We'll tell you how much the U.S. government was paying in rent every year to lease an office building that was home to just 49 government employees. If you had to put 49 people in an office building, I know you have some experience with renting things and out at the college. How much would you, if you had to rent some space for 49 people a year, what do you think it would cost to lease some space to put 49 people
A
in?
year? I'm gonna say probably, well, depends what city you're talking. What give me city. What city?
Well, let's say it was Washington, D.C.
You're probably talking, I'm gonna say, and this is being conservative, 10 grand a month, so 120,000 a year.
Okay, well let's double it. Let's make it $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
We'll tell you how much you're off by. And our taxpayer relief shot this week. Normally we do where a good guy or a good, private citizen administers the taxpayer relief check. Well, this week is from McAllen, Texas, where a guy showed up and thought it would be a good time to start shooting at Customs and Border Patrol agents. That made the news this week, so we'll talk about that. All right. Stupidest thing I've heard all week. Here's our first contenders. The first is, have you heard people trying to blame Trump and/or climate change for the flooding deaths in
Oh
Texas?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, the area where the flooding occurred in Texas last week that claimed the lives of nearly 100 people has been known for decades as
Mhm.
Flash Flood Alley. It
Yes.
got that name decades ago based on a 150-year history of deadly flash floods, some far deadlier than the one that occurred past weekend.
Mhm.
Others are attributing the event to man-made climate change, despite the historical record showing that similar and even worse floods were occurring in that same region as far back as 1868, and even earlier, but they weren't keeping records before 1868. And here's an example. In 1921, a flood which caused the river to rise 36 feet, which was 10 feet higher than last week's flood, which rose to 26 feet, killed not 100 people, it killed 215 people. And that
Wow.
was in 1921, which is 104 years ago. So, how many internal combustion engine cars were on the road in 1921?
Not that many.
Not that many. All right. So, was man made climate change responsible for that 1921 flood or the four previous?
Absolutely not.
How about the four previous deadly floods that occurred between 1921 and
Nope.
1968?
It's called Mother Nature.
Okay. Were the cuts that Trump had made to the staff of NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, somehow responsible for the alleged lack of timely flood warnings? Well, the answer is no, because
No.
reports show that the first flood warning for that area was issued by the National Weather Service at 1:58 in the afternoon. And the
Mhm.
flood, by the way, didn't occur around 4 a.m. the following morning. Um, so that was more than 12 hours before the actual
Yes.
event, and the flood warnings were continually updated over the next right up till midnight. There was
Mhm.
no failure on the part of National Weather Service. I think you've got some connections with the National
Yeah,
Weather.
I have a very good friend. He worked at the National Weather Service for 30 years. He was a victim of the Doge.
Uh-huh.
Um, he ended up taking his retirement, early retirement instead, but he still is very passionate about his job. And he said, as somebody who used to work there, I know for a fact that those warnings went out, like you mentioned, 12 plus hours ahead of time. So they had 12 plus hours of warning.
Right. Yeah,
Yes, there were additional warnings that happened at 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning while people were
it's
sleeping,
like
but there were warnings that happened throughout the daylight hours that people did not heed.
right. And you're staying in a place known as Flash Flood Alley. This shouldn't
Mhm.
come as a surprise to you
Yeah.
that when it rains hard, but even if the rain's and the thunder's going to wake you up, you're staying in a place called Flash Flood Alley. You
Yeah.
move to higher ground.
Mhm.
Well, that's our first contender. People saying that it's Trump's fault, and that because the National Weather Service didn't issue any warnings and it's man-made climate change. Well, that's one. So keep that in your mind. Now, here's the second one. President Biden on The View last week saying I could have won the election, and here's why I dropped out. And when you listen to why he dropped out, it's bizarre. And this is Jesse Waters on Fox. So here we go. He shouldn't have stepped down.
Knowing what you know now, do you think you would have beat him?
Yeah, he still got 7 million fewer votes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of people didn't show up.
Mhm.
Number one. Number two, they're very close in those toss-up states. It was it wasn't a slam dunk.
None of this makes sense. If you thought you could have beaten him, why'd you step down? If you knew Kamala would lose, why'd you step down?
You served under Barack Obama, George Clooney, a longtime supporter of yours, major Democratic donor, Chuck Schumer, your dear friend Nancy Pelosi also had expressed concerns about your ability to do the job for 4 more years. Can I ask what your relationship is with President Obama and how you address those concerns that they raised?
Well, look, I think that the only reason I got out of the race was because I didn't want to have a divided Democratic Party. It was a simple proposition. And so that's why I got out of the race. I thought it was better to put the country ahead of my interest, my personal interest. I'm not being facetious. I'm being deadly earnest about that.
Biden knew Kamala was going to lose, and he knew he was going to win. How is that putting country above party? If you're a Democrat, it's the opposite. It's putting party above country. What does Biden care if his party's divided if he beats Trump? If Trump's a dictator, like he says he was, why would Biden purposely lose an election? Now Trump's president, the Democrats are more divided than ever. This is why he went on The View. Any real journalist would have picked up on the flaws of that logic and say, Joe, what are you talking about? He says he shouldn't have stepped down.
So, which of those two do you think is the stupidest thing you've heard? Or Biden's explanation that I could have won and this is why I stepped down, knowing that Harris was going to lose, or people blaming Trump for the floods in Texas? Which one of those is the stupidest thing you've heard?
The floods in Texas was absolutely tragic, despite the fact that there were warnings in advance. But I got to go with the Joe Biden. That is that's
I couldn't have won, and here's my explanation for why I stepped down, which is just totally bizarre. Totally bizarre. I didn't want to divide the Democratic Party. Well, the Democratic Party is more divided than ever. All right, so that was that. By the way, we got a clip-rich show today. So here's what happens if you would have asked Alexa last fall why you should vote for Donald Trump or why you should vote for Kamala Harris. And let me correct a typo here in my show notes. And here we go. And this is from the Joe Rogan show. Play.
When they asked Alexa why you should vote for Trump or why you should vote for Biden.
No, I didn't.
It's crazy.
What happened?
It's so crazy. Watch this.
Why should I vote for Donald Trump?
I cannot provide content that promotes a specific political party or a specific candidate.
Now, I cannot provide content that promotes a specific candidate or party. Did you catch that?
Yep.
Now she's going to ask Alexa about Kamala Harris.
Alexa, why should I vote for Kamala Harris?
While there are many reasons to vote for Kamala Harris, the most significant may be that she is a strong candidate with a proven track record of accomplishment. Harris has already broken down a major gender barrier, and her career in politics has been characterized by a commitment to progressive ideals and a focus on helping disenfranchised communities.
There's a Grand Canyon between.
So
from that, one can conclude that Alexa is a Democrat.
Or is being controlled by people with a very liberal bias.
Yeah.
You probably weren't aware of that. You know, we always talk about media bias all the time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, guess what, folks? Alexa is what you get from Alexa. There's a liberal bias when you from any questions you ask Alexa. All right. I got so many clips today. All right. Let's go to our way back segment. Nancy Pelosi, and again, everybody was criticizing the hell out of Trump 10 days ago when he did that midnight raid on the Iran nuclear facilities. Not everybody. I mean, a lot of people on the conservative side were applauding him, but every Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they were just all lambasted. Oh, he should have gotten approval from Congress. He should have told us about it. Well, here's what happened. Okay.
I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. In 2011, Nancy Pelosi praised Barack Obama's strikes in Libya that were conducted without congressional approval, commending his courage in taking action. Now, Pelosi is condemning President Donald Trump for striking nuclear sites in Iran without congressional approval. Pelosi expressed support for Obama's decision to launch 110 Tomahawk cruise missiles at the country, saying, quote, I commend the president for his courage in taking this action and salute our men and women in uniform for their part in saving lives.
Now, Obama launched 110 cruise missiles, count that, 110 cruise missiles against Libya and never told Congress he was going to do it ahead of time.
Now, Pelosi has taken the opposite stance with Trump, saying the president ignored the Constitution by unilaterally engaging our military without congressional authorization. I join my colleagues in demanding answers from the administration on this operation, which endangers American lives and risks further escalation and dangerous destabilization of the region.
Can you say hypocrite, boys and girls?
Yeah. You got to keep those things tight. You got to keep that information tight because, you start telling all of Congress and,
I don't care. Even if you tell half a dozen of them, if 3 of them are Democrats, it's going to be all over.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that time and time.
And I heard many people, Democrats included, applaud him for his quick, decisive action to stop this before it started.
Yep. So anyway, yeah, you can't keep anything in Washington secret. Trust me. Somebody once said if the only way two people can keep a secret is if one of them is dead.
Yep,
You ever heard that? Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So let's go to our favorite senator, John Kennedy. And I got another typo in my show notes. My goodness, my producer gets mad at me when I have typos. So here's John Kennedy. He's talking, and again, this is a congressional hearing on the rapid rise and raise of electricity. And this witness is a witness called. Remember last week he was questioning a witness that had been called by the Democrats, and he showed up. He admitted he took a gas engine powered Uber to come to the hearing,
Yes,
and he was
yes.
saying that oil company CEOs should be tried for
Mhm.
homicide and sent to
Yep.
prison. Right, that was a Democratic witness. Well, here is questioning another Democrat witness at this congressional hearing.
Economy has experienced substantial inflation. Is that correct? And
Yes, sir.
that inflation is man-made, is it not?
Any inflation is man-made, sir.
And that man's name is Joe Biden, is it not?
Cannot answer that, sir.
Okay. Since President Biden took office, average electricity prices in the United States are up 29.4%. Are they not?
I'll have to check the data and get back to you on that, sir.
And isn't it true that electricity prices have increased under President Biden, have increased 13 times faster than the previous 7 years?
I'll have to check the data, sir.
Okay.
Now, by the way, this guy's supposed to be an expert witness, and he doesn't know the data.
You would think
And,
that if you're being called, though, you would have this data. If you know that you're being called to testify about a particular subject matter, that you would have this data readily available.
Remember last year when they were talking about the climate change and CO2 in the atmosphere, and
Yeah.
nobody had a clue what percentage of the atmosphere was CO2, which, by the way, was 0.04%. None of them, they were guessing 5, 6, 8%. All right, here we go.
National Energy Assistant Directors Association. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I've checked them out. They're a reputable group. They say that the average United States electricity bill will go up 10% this year and 10% next year. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not familiar with the data, but I can point out, sir, that in Europe,
I'm not interested
in Europe, prices are 2.5 to 3% higher.
I'm interested in our people right now who are having to,
who
are having to sell blood in order to pay their electricity bill.
Goodness.
A substantial portion of this inflation in electricity, up 30% since President Biden took office, is directly related to his energy policies. Is it not?
Energy prices fluctuate based on supply and demand of all sources of energy. Yes.
I think it has nothing. Is that a yes or no?
It's a very complicated economic question.
Give me an answer. Did President Biden's policies contribute to the inflation, or didn't they?
Both Republican and Democratic administrations infuse the economy with trillions of dollars, which contributes to the inflation.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't believe any Republicans voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Well, I do. $1.2 trillion, Green New Deal. No Republicans voted for it. You want to amend your answer?
Anyway, I won't put, it goes on for 3 more minutes. If anybody wants to listen to the rest of it, producer Susan, can you put the link to that up in the Jerzee Joe website?
Absolutely.
All right. And by the way, so remember, 29% over the past 4 years is going to be 10% this year and another 10% next year. Well, 29 plus 10 plus 10, that's 49% in 5 years. That's a 50% increase in the cost of electricity in 6 years. That's pretty ridiculous. How much time we got left?
You got about 15 minutes.
Okay, good. Then we can play this clip of Hunter Biden. He's been sued again for something, and he's asking the judge to throw out his lawsuit because he's $1 million in debt. And remember, this was the guy that was selling his paintings when his father was president. People were buying his paintings for $50,000 each, just as fast as he could paint them. So here he is now, and again, this is Jesse Waters again.
He just asked a judge to toss a laptop lawsuit because he's millions in debt and can't afford his lawyers. Hunter says it's hard for him to make a living. That's strange. An Ivy League educated lawyer and energy expert with international business experience can't find a steady job in the new golden age. Even though he's the smartest guy Joe Biden knows, Hunter sold 27 pieces of art totaling over $1 million before.
Remember, he sold 27 paintings for an average of $50,000. Can you imagine he sold 27 pieces of art for $50,000?
Yeah, that's
Here
a lot of art.
we go.
A lot of money.
2023, but then his dad dropped out and he only sold one. Nobody's buying the paintings now that daddy's back in Delaware. Funny how the Bidens cry poor as soon as they're out of government. That should tell you everything about where the money's coming from. The government's supposed to be working for you, not.
So by the way, so he sells 27 pieces of art in 1 year, and then the minute his father drops out of the rate, he sells one.
That's funny.
Anything fishy there at all?
Yeah.
Making politicians and their friends rich. That's what Doge is all about. Democrats used to pretend they supported that.
What should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. Waste we should be getting rid of, even if we didn't have a deficit. Did you know the federal government pays for a website devoted to a folk music ensemble made up of forest rangers? They're called the Fiddlin' Foresters.
Anyway, so that he goes on to Obama basically saying that what we need is like a Doge cleaning house, but there's a little perspective on Hunter Biden as a artistic wonder. So, all right, so let's go on to New York City mayors. For those that don't know, there was a Democratic primary that had like 6 people running in it, and one of the leading contenders, well, the guy who won it is a socialist communist called Zoran Mondami that is promising free everything. I'm going to freeze rents. I'm going to make buses free. I'm going to tax rich white people and their homes. I'm going to establish a network of city-owned and operated grocery stores that'll operate it for no profit. We went over this last week, right?
Yeah. It's all ridiculous. And by the way, absolutely nothing is free. Somebody is paying for that.
Right. Somebody, yeah, there is no such thing as free. Somebody's paying for any free stuff you get. So anyway, so now Eric Adams elected, the current mayor elected not to run as a Democrat. He said, I'm going to run as an independent. Well, that left, so he wasn't running against Mondami in the primary, but the former governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo, again, who resigned in disgrace, did. And Andrew Cuomo came in second to Mondami. Now, what's interesting, it was one of these ranked choice votings. Mondami did not get a majority of the votes. He got a plurality of the votes. So if you take the number of people who voted against Mondami, more people voted against him than voted for him. But because he got the plurality, he's now the Democrat nominee. And historically, if you're the Democrat nominee in New York City, you're almost guaranteed to be the mayor. But in this case, you know, he didn't get a majority of the votes. He got a simple plurality. And if you believe that, the people who voted for these other 4 candidates besides him would have rather have seen somebody besides him, that means he, as a Democrat, he might be beatable. But here's the issue. Eric Adams had already declared months ago that he was going to run as an independent, so he's in the race. Cuomo, the sore loser who came in second, said, well, you know, I think I'm going to run as an independent too. Now, if both Cuomo and Adams both run as independent, what do you think happens?
They're going to take all the votes away from Mondavi.
No, they'll take votes from away from each other.
Yeah.
They'll split. Yeah. They'll split the. So let's say that only 40% of the people would vote for Mondami, and 60% would vote for somebody else. But if that 60% splits half to Adams and half to Cuomo, who wins the race?
The Republicans, probably.
No. Mondami wins.
Oh, in other words, yeah.
If Mondami gets 40 and Adams and Cuomo each get 30%, the guy with 40% that nobody wants wins.
Yeah.
And the people of New York City lose. So I hope that Cuomo decides, you know, here's what I think should happen. Somebody should run a poll, you know, one of the newspapers, you know, should run a poll And as an independent candidate, who do you favor, Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo?
Mhm.
And the guy who comes in ahead, the other guy should drop out because I think either Cuomo or Adams has a great chance of
Mhm.
beating Mondami and saving New York City from him. But
Yeah,
if they both,
this is what's scary though, too, is that he was endorsed by AOC and somehow AOC won her election. So,
yeah, well, but that's just
because again, he's on the platform that everything's free, free, free. But y'all need to remember who's paying for all this free
right.
stuff.
But even though he promised free, 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 he still didn't get more than 50% of the votes.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
because
he
I
is
think that people are getting wise to this free that
right.
somebody's paying this bill.
I couldn't agree more, but I guarantee you, if Cuomo and Adams both run,
Mhm.
they're going to split the
Yeah.
independent vote, or even some of the Democrats. But there's millions of Democrats that don't like the guy.
Mhm.
But if Adams and Cuomo split those people who are opposed to Mondami, Mondami wins.
Mhm.
So that's going to be the big race this November. All right. So let's go on to this government office building that's housing 49 people. Now you estimated 120,000, and I said, well, let's double it, making 250,000.
Yeah, sure. I'll
Well,
agree to that.
let's see what they're actually paying. And by the way, this is a building that is big enough to house, I didn't tell you this, could house 2,900 workers, but only 49 are showing up. So here we go.
Make this up. I've got this big, beautiful area where employees are supposed to work. Nobody's here.
How many people are supposed to be working in those buildings?
There was about 2,900 people that were supposed to work in the building. Turns out only 49 were showing up full time on a
Wait,
5-day.
no, slow it down, slow it down. 2,900 people? How many showed up?
On average, the highest that we saw on a 5-day work week was 49 people.
If you don't come to work, are you really?
49 people in an office building that could seat 2,900. Now, walk me through this. 10% of 2,900 would be 290, right?
Mhm.
And half of that, which would be 5%. What's half of 290 would be what, 145?
Yeah, 145.
5, and half of that would be 70 something, which would be so about 2% of the 29 people were. So we haven't got to how much they were paying for that yet. Here we go.
Really needed?
Crazy, right?
I mean, insane.
By the way, we're spending on that one building, just to point this out, $57 million a year.
Wow.
$57 million a year to provide office space for 49 people.
Wow.
49 people. So you were only off by a factor of 1,000. So,
Wow.
and that's some of the stuff the Doge. Remember last week we talked about the Doge team showed up and they tried to destroy, 2 terabytes of data that they were
Yeah.
able to recover. So that's the type of, we talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, that's the waste and abuse. A 2,900 person office building, $57 million a year to house 49 full-time workers. That was what was happening there. All right, let's see what else we got here. How much time we got?
Oh, you got about 5-6 minutes.
All right, well, let's do, we haven't done why we call them taxpayer relief shots in a while. So when a good guy or a good, typically we do private citizens or, store owners or homeowners. But today we're going to do one where law enforcement was the good guy. But here's uh, here's why the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida. Here's what he explains them.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And again, for those who haven't heard us say this before, if a thug gets arrested and gets a trial, well, he gets a free court-appointed attorney, and there's appeals and whatnot. So his trial is going to cost. Then you got the judge and the jury and the prosecutors and the assistant prosecutors. It's a $200,000 trial, and then to send him to jail for 10 years at $80,000 a year is another $800,000 a year. So to send a thug to jail for just 10 years is $1 million. That's why we call them taxpayer relief shots. Well, did you hear about the guy in McAllen, Texas yesterday that was the day before that showed up and said he drove down from Michigan and said, I think I want to kill some Customs and Border Patrol. Did that story make it out to where you live?
No, I didn't hear it until you told me about it.
Oh, well, okay. That's why we call it news and perspective. You didn't. So a guy from Michigan apparently didn't like was get. By the way, the left is saying, "Oh, ICE are evil, and these are Gestapo, and we need to put a stop to." Well, apparently he took that to heart. Remember last week we played the clip from the assistant vice mayor of Los Angeles
Yes.
urging the gangs to take up
Mhm.
arms against ICE agent. Well, apparently he was listening to that and decided to do something about it. So here's what he did.
We are back with details of a deadly shooting at a U.S. Border Patrol facility here in Texas. 3 officers are recovering tonight, and the shooter is dead. It all happened early this morning around 6 a.m. Homeland Security says a man identified as Ryan Luis Mosqueda arrived to the Border Patrol offices at the McAllen International Airport armed with a rifle and tactical gear. While he did not get inside, photos show gunshots piercing through the glass of the front door. One officer was shot in the knee. At least one more officer and a Border Patrol employee were also hurt. They are thankfully expected to be okay. Now, Border Patrol agents and McAllen police shot and killed that suspect. Mosqueda has a Michigan address and license plate. Tonight, authorities still working to find a motive. And tonight, investigators are looking into.
So, as the sheriff of Polk County, they shot him a lot,
Yeah.
right? And he wound up DRT. And what's DRT stand
Dead
for?
right there.
Dead right there. So that's our taxpayer relief shot. All right. Anything you want to add before we sign off for the week?
You will never hear me complain about the snow, but it is hot out there.
Hot and humid. I know it's miserable here too. All right. Anyway, if you got nothing else to add, I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about the things that I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found them as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen to this podcast in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard us talk about today, give producer Susan a couple of days, and you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerseyjoe.com, with Jersey being spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee, jerseyjoe.com. And if you want to email me with a comment, question, suggested show topic, or you'd like me to email you one of the links directly so you don't have to go to the website, I'll be happy to do that for you. Just send me an email to joe@jerseyjoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and 2 E's. And with that, producer Susan, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Nope, stay cool.
I'll say you too, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.